Thank you for the introduction and opening lesson, Julia. For the second part of our presentation, I'd like to talk about the importance of context at all levels of discourse. We'll begin by looking at why context is important. Then we'll look at how we use context in conversations. And we'll finish with using context in situations. To conclude the lesson, I'll present two tasks for you to complete as homework. Why is context important for maintaining the main idea? I believe a quote from Kamp sums it up well. As Kamp says, meaning depends on context. It depends on context in all sorts of ways. This is a truism that comes almost for free. Context allows us to know the overall meaning and main point of the discourse, as well as allowing us to maintain our understanding throughout the entire discourse. By knowing the meaning of the discourse, context ultimately allows us to stay on topic. Without knowing the context of the discourse, it is almost impossible for us to maintain focus and to stay with the main point. Think of aiming at a target. Without context, we can take many shots at the target, but will only arrive at the main point after a lot of unnecessary dialogue. With context, we are able to remain focused and are able to get directly to the point. Let's look at two examples that demonstrate this. For our first example, let's look at a simple conversation. Let's imagine we hear a conversation between Tom and Joe. Tom says, "It looks good," to which Joe replies, "I like it too." While this is a valid conversation, what is the context of it? How do we know what Tom and Joe are talking about? How do we know what the main idea is? Furthermore, how do we know the necessary details, the what, when, and where, without context? By giving just a bit more information, we are supplied with the context for this situation. Again, let's imagine that Tom and Joe are having a conversation. This time, we are given the information that they are in a restaurant, looking at a menu. With this context, we now know exactly what Tom and Joe are talking about, a menu item that they both like. With this context, we also now know the main point of the conversation, that Tom and Joe are going to order some food that they both enjoy. Let's look at another example. This example shows the importance of context in the overall situation, or what G calls discourse with a big D. If we are studying American history, such as talking about the Boston Tea Party, we need some context to understand the entire situation. If I just show you this image and tell you it is from the Boston Tea Party, what would you think the main idea was? That Native Americans were angry and destroying property? That people are getting rid of spoiled items on a ship? That pirates have raided the ship? It isn't until we know the context of the situation, that the American colonists were actually angry with the British Crown for raising their taxes without representation, that we can understand the main point. With this context, we can know the cause of the Boston Tea Party, why the action was taken, and what the action eventually led to, the American Revolution. Now, I'd like you to practice putting situations to context. For the first task, I'd like you to think of a conversation you have been involved in where you didn't hear or didn't understand the main point. Describe how long it took you to finally understand the main point without context, how you finally understood the context, and any strategies you used to make understanding the context easier. For the second task, I'd like you to think of a situation from your country's history, similar to America's Boston Tea Party, that people would really misunderstand without knowing the context. As we've seen, context is very important to understanding the main idea of a discourse. In our final presentation, David is going to explain another valuable tool for understanding the main point, inference. Thank you for listening, and I'll let David take it from here.